feel free to ask questions on their topic. So again, we'll start out with the questions, and then you can go ahead with your questions. But please do not move about or go in and out of the room. All right? All right, we'll get started with our first person who will introduce herself. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Katelyn Jacob, and the title of my speech is Stop Poisoning Us, the Role of the FDA in the American Health Crisis. It was October 15, 2024, one of the most monumental days for our nation's food industry. Signs that contain slogans like "Stop Poisoning Us" could be seen, and chants such as "Let us in" and "No more dies" were heard. On this day, Vani Hari, more commonly known as Food Babe, was leading a rally and a march to the headquarters of Kellogg. She had launched a petition requesting that the beloved cereal company remove both the preservative, BHT, and artificial colors from their American cereals, as they had done in other countries because of stricter regulations. In her own words, quote, "This will be the biggest petition ever collected that takes on the food industry," end quote. Even though she was denied entrance into the headquarters, she still made one thing very clear. She, as every American should, was boycotting Kellogg until something changed. On January 15, 2025, the artificial food dye used in more than 3,000 products because of its association with cancer and behavioral problems, red number 3, was finally banned by the FDA. Although this is one step in the right direction, it is far from the last. The food industry is still a major issue in America, and it is up to those in charge to change things once and for all and stop the harm they have caused to far too many people for far too many years. The number of health issues in America has been on the rise. Obesity rates in adults and children have increased from 30.5% and 13.9% during 1999 to 2000 to 41.9% and 19.7% during 2017 to 2020, respectively. Mental illnesses, which are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these, have also increased. Only 19% of adults had a mental or emotional disorder in 2000, but 23% had a mental illness during 2021 to 2023. The state of a person's health is directly influenced by the food that they consume. The right food can have positive effects, but conversely, the wrong foods can have negative effects. In fact, chronic food illnesses, which include obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, kill 1,600 Americans every single day. The food industry is in its current state because of the Food and Drug Administration, more commonly known as the FDA. It is responsible for protecting the public health by ensuring the safety, efficacy, and security of many areas, one of which includes our nation's food supply. But there are multiple gaps between the definition and role of the FDA and how it currently functions. For example, if qualified experts claim that a chemical or additive is safe, then it is not required to be approved by the FDA. However, these qualified experts are often hired by food companies themselves. In total, 43% of additives allowed in the United States are generally recognized as safe, yet under 5% of them have been genuinely tested for this safety. The current regulations in place by the FDA play a significant role in the state of the food industry. Ultra-processed foods, which are foods that contain ingredients you could not find in your own home, such as high fructose corn syrup or artificial food dyes, make up 70% of packaged foods and 60% of grocery purchases in America. Additives, which can be found in ultra-processed foods, are also very prevalent. About 10,000 food additives are permissible in America, and more than 50% of American groceries contain a chemical coloring or flavoring agent, preservative, or sweetener. After examining the current health crises in America, the regulations in place by the FDA, and the state of American food, it is evident that the lack of health is a result of the food industry. In order to improve the poor and ultimately life-threatening state of health and wellness in America, the FDA must place stricter regulations on the American food industry. The lack of strict FDA regulations is detrimental to the physical, psychological, and physiological health of Americans and places America inferior to the health and food standards of other countries. First, the physical health of America is harmed due to the current state of the country's food. Conditions such as obesity and type 2 diabetes are correlated to the food people are eating. Second, the need for stricter regulations is evident in the psychological health of America. Mental illness, violence, and decreased cognitive function can all be traced back to the food being consumed. Third, the lack of stricter regulations is evident in the physiological health of America. Cancer and other conditions are the result of the food Americans are eating. Lastly, American health and food standards do not meet those of other countries. These countries are healthier and also ban ingredients and foods that can be found in America. Physical health is marked by normal functioning of the body and encapsulates many elements, such as the way the body is cared for and what goes into it, as well as its growth, feeling, and movement. Conditions that are common today, such as obesity and diabetes, are evidence that a person's physical health is suffering. These conditions can be traced back to the food industry and what Americans are consuming on a daily basis. Obesity is a major issue in America, and the food that is consumed plays a role in this. There was a study conducted that focused on the effects of ultra-processed foods versus minimally processed foods, or foods that have not been processed or that have been modified only minimally. In this study, one group of people ate a diet of ultra-processed foods, while another group ate a diet of minimally processed foods, both being similar in macronutrients. Participants could choose to eat the amount they wanted of the meals they were given. The group who ate ultra-processed foods consumed an extra 500 calories per day and gained weight, compared to the group who ate minimally processed foods and lost weight. There is a clear connection between ultra-processed foods and an increased caloric consumption, therefore leading to weight gain. But obesity is not the only physical condition that is connected to the food industry. Type 2 diabetes is also a result and occurs when a person's blood glucose or blood sugar levels are elevated. As of 2024, it accounted for 90 to 95% of diabetes cases in America. A study that was done on 10 million people found that consuming ultra-processed foods increased the risk for type 2 diabetes by 12%. If stricter regulations are put into place, conditions such as obesity and type 2 diabetes would see drastic declines. But not only is the physical health of America harmed due to the current state of the food industry, but psychological health suffers as well. Psychological health focuses on emotional, cognitive, behavioral, and social well-being. In 2022, a study was done on over 10,000 adults. The higher the intake of ultra-processed foods, the higher the chances were of depression and anxiety. Specifically, it was found that if more than 60% of their calories came from ultra-processed foods, they experienced, quote, significantly more mentally unhealthy days, end quote. Another aspect of psychological health that is affected by the food industry is the violence seen in America. A study performed on 3,000 incarcerated youth showed a decrease in assaults and in the use of restraints when refined and sugary food intake was reduced and snack foods were replaced with healthier alternatives. After 12 months, there was a 25% decrease in assaults and a 75% decrease in the use of restraints. Food dyes are one ingredient specifically linked to poor psychological health. Food dyes are chemical substances that were developed to enhance the appearance of food by giving it artificial color. They are made from petroleum and can be found in many products, including candy, cereal, and sports drinks. A 2021 California state report noted that consumption of synthetic dyes by children can cause them to experience a variety of neurobehavioral issues, including hyperactivity, which constitutes symptoms such as fidgeting, excessive movement, and an inability to concentrate. Red number 40, one of the most prominent food dyes, is found in more than 40% of children-targeted foods and has specifically been linked to hyperactivity, trouble focusing, and irritability. These issues that include anxiety, depression, violence, and hyperactivity would all decrease if stricter regulations are put into place. The last area of American health negatively impacted by the food industry is physiological health. Physiology, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is the branch of health that deals with the normal function of living organisms and their systems and organs. It then follows from this definition that physiological health has to do with how well a person's body is functioning as it is meant to. Signs of poor physiological health include cancer, asthma, bodily reactions, and disease. Cancer ranks as the second leading cause of all American deaths. If an ingredient is listed as a carcinogen, this means that it is capable of causing cancer. According to the National Toxicology Program, BHA, a preservative that can be found in meats like pepperoni and sausage, is, quote, reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen, end quote, and is also known as a carcinogen under California's Proposition 65. In addition to cancer, American foods lead to other physiological conditions as well. The food dye yellow number 5 has been shown to cause allergies, hives, and asthma. BHA and BHT are known to be endocrine disruptors, which means that they alter the function of a person's hormones and can lead to disease. It is evident that cancer, as well as other serious conditions, could be prevented if American food was different and stricter regulations by the FDA are put into place. Although there are many arguments that support the claim that the FDA needs to implement stricter regulations, arguments can also be presented against this claim. The first counter-argument is that stricter regulations would result in higher food prices. If stricter regulations are put into place and ingredients such as preservatives and artificial food dyes are no longer allowed, then yes, it is entirely possible that food prices could increase. But what this difference in price does not account for is healthcare costs. According to Utah State University, medical costs for people who are considered obese are $1,500 more per year than for someone who is of a normal weight. They are also higher for people with chronic diseases. An individual with 3 to 4 chronic diseases spends $25,000 on healthcare, whereas an individual with no chronic diseases only spends $6,000. Another counter-argument that could be made is that it is the responsibility of the consumer, not the FDA, to make decisions about what goes into their body. America is a capitalistic society in which consumers and producers have the freedom to buy and sell what they choose. This gives autonomy to its citizens and limits the influence the government can have. But increasing regulations would not increase government control at all, but would instead allow the FDA to fulfill both its practical and biblical obligations. The FDA, according to its definition, is already responsible for the protection of public health and the safety of the food supply. But as things currently stand, the FDA is not protecting the public health and is not ensuring the safety of the food supply. There are also biblical obligations the FDA must fulfill. Romans 13:4a says, quote, "For the one in authority is God's servant for your good," end quote. This verse implies that the government is to act in the good of those it rules over. While the consumer is responsible for making the final decisions on their food, the FDA is still responsible for a certain level of regulation to demonstrate that it has the good of the country and its citizens in mind. Arguments against stricter regulations by the FDA certainly do exist, but it is evident that they can be refuted. The final argument for placing stricter regulations on the food industry is clear when the health and food standards of other countries are compared to those of America. They are significantly healthier and also have increased regulations in place. The health statistics of other countries when compared to those of America are alarming. As of 2011, America had the highest overweight and obesity rates in children, at 35.9% for girls and 35% for boys. In 2008, of adults aged 25 or greater, America had the highest prevalence of diabetes among its peer countries. Lastly, a 2004 World Health Organization study showed that out of 14 countries, America had the highest occurrence of mental illnesses, with over 1/4 of the population reporting having had a mental disease in the past year. After American health is compared to that of other countries, it is no shock that healthcare spending is also significantly higher. In 2022, the healthcare expenditures per person in America were $12,555. The average spending on healthcare among all of the countries comparable to America was $6,651 per person. This means that America is spending almost twice as much as similar countries are on healthcare in a year. There are also ingredients and foods allowed in America that are banned around the world. The artificial food dyes, red number 40, yellow number 5, and yellow number 6, have all been banned in Europe. Europe has also placed a ban on the preservatives BHA and BHT. Finally, potassium bromate, which is found in breads and bagels, has been banned in China, India, Brazil, the European Union, and Canada. Foods such as Ritz crackers have been banned in the United Kingdom, Canada, and Brazil because they contain potassium bromate. Gatorade has been banned in Europe because it contains the artificial food dyes red number 40, yellow number 3, and yellow number 6. There is an overwhelming number of issues with the American food system that become more evident when America is compared to other countries. The current state of health in America is poor and only getting worse. There are high healthcare costs, low life expectancy rates, and an overabundance of medical diagnoses. The food consumed is becoming more and more processed and contains ingredients that are detrimental to the health of society. If stricter regulations by the FDA are not put into place, then the health of America will continue to decline and consequences will continue to arise. But if the FDA takes proper action and increases its regulations, then the quality of American life will change, and the health crisis currently seen will without a doubt improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Katelyn. So my first question, does the fact that Americans have higher rates of disease and that they spend more on healthcare, does it have anything to, like, is there a cultural component where Americans are more likely to go visit the doctor than people in other countries?
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting. So compared to other countries, America actually ranks as has one of the fewest rates of visits per year. 2021 data actually showed that Americans visited the doctor an average of 3 times per year, which is actually one of the lowest rates in the world. Compared to countries like, for example, Canada was at 5 per year, and the highest country being South Korea was 16 times per year. So compared to other countries, we're actually visiting the doctor significantly less. So in theory, elements such as disease rates and healthcare costs, you would think would be lower, but they are actually higher. And because this is the fact, this further emphasizes the issue of health that we currently see in America.
Katelyn, why do some companies make their products with harmful ingredients or dyes, like some sodas like Fanta for Americans, but then when they market them or supply them for other countries, they leave it out? Why do they put all that junk in there for us, but they're willing not to for another country?
Yeah, so it all has to do with economic reasons and honestly money, because these regulations exist in other countries, they're not allowed to use these harmful ingredients, which ultimately cost less. But because they are allowed in America, they have the opportunity to use them, and they are going to use them because not only are they, easier to market and they look more appealing, for example, food dyes, but they also cost less, so they bring in more profit, which is ultimately what they're seeking.
Katelyn, FDA is obviously government. So, as free citizens, what would be your suggestion for people for their diets now? And how much did you notice the pharmaceutical industry also has kind of, are they together in the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry? industry, because obviously there's the Ozempic shots now for people with type 2 diabetes to lose weight and all of those things. So what's the relationship between that, and then what is your suggestion for people to circumvent until government agencies decide what is good for us and what's not?
Yes, I do definitely think there is a correlation, because there is clear health issues that are arising because of the food industry, and they're trying to present things like Ozempic or those other drugs just as a way to mask the issue. But all they're doing, they're just, like I said, they're just masking the issue, and it really just gives these pharmaceutical companies and the food companies more profit. But in the meantime, I think until stricter regulations are put into place, which I do believe we are on that path, I think it is just really important for just consumer awareness and just making those really easy decisions that you can right now. And a lot of people are worried that it will increase their costs or increase their food prices, but there are so many easy things you can do. For example, going to the grocery store and buying a banana or a piece of fruit. Like, those things are so inexpensive, but they are so much healthier than buying the processed stuff, the processed items that you can find other places in the grocery store.
So basically shop the outside of the store and the inside of the store.
Go ahead and open it up to anyone who'd like to ask her a question.
Yes?
Have there been any more recent developments, like you said, we're on a path towards stricter regulations? Have there been any more recent developments on that?
So like I mentioned, red number 3 was banned in January of this year. And actually, I just found this out yesterday, but today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who just assumed the role as the Human Health and Services Secretary, is actually speaking today about banning 8 more petroleum-based food dyes. That could include red number 40, yellow number 6, many food dyes that we see all the time in America. So I don't really have any details on that right now, but I know today he's having a press conference and giving more details about that. So yes, I do believe things are happening. Yes?
If someone was trying to get started eating better, what would be the first thing that you found, biggest thing, most important thing to avoid?
I think honestly the easiest thing to avoid is, like I mentioned, food dyes I think are one thing that are so easy to avoid because they are completely unnecessary. And you can find so many products that don't contain food dyes. Like, just look all around the grocery store at the Whole Foods. Like, none of those are going to contain any ingredients that are detrimental to your health. And a lot of them are also relatively inexpensive. So not only are they better for you, but they're also super accessible for anyone. Yes?
Whether it's you or people that you know who've changed their diets, other than obviously the long-term reduction in chronic disease, what are some immediate signs or impacts on people's health that you or others that you've talked to have noticed after they've changed their diets and eliminated some of these dyes?
Yeah, I think honestly, just how you feel is one of the biggest signs that your diet is, better than what it was. Because I think just people eating so many processed foods, they don't realize it, but they just they don't feel as good as they would if they ate whole, unprocessed foods. I mean, I think this also shows up especially in children. There was a research that I did. There was one lady who, her son, when she eliminated all food dyes from his diet, he stopped having issues at school. He acted so much better. He didn't have outbursts. So I think before taking ultra-processed foods out of the diet, it might be hard to see, how could this impact my life? But when you do it, there is a big difference, and I think it shows just up in everyday life.
You obviously had a little bit of passion for this topic to choose it and some information. Was there anything that as you went through the research and studied things that shocked you or kind of was like, wow, that you weren't expecting?
I think honestly, just the statistics in terms of how much of the food that we consume is so processed and just not what it was supposed to be. I mean, hundreds of years ago, none of this would have ever existed. And so the fact that 60-70% of the food we're eating is processed, made in a lab, not natural at all, I think was just one of the things that shocked me the most.
Katelyn, what do you think some of the biggest roadblocks we're up against, as a society, in making America healthier?
I think one of the biggest ones, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, is just I think people are scared what it'll do economically because I think they do think that taking these out will not only, maybe increase prices a little bit depending on what the product is, but also make products less appealing, because I think one of the main reasons they do add these in is because of taste or look. So I think that could be a roadblock, but I think pushing through and just making it happen, people will see what benefits it could have. Yes.
Do you think it's an economic difference there, or do you think it's an effort part there? Because, for example, for mothers and where the two people in the household work, isn't it easier for them just to go and take out something from the fridge, put it in the microwave, and we're done for dinner, or for lunch the next day, instead of having to cook, like actually cook for the family? So don't you think that's part of the problem too? It's going to be more work for the family?
Yes, I do think that convenience is super important, especially for busy families. And I think that, having these stricter regulations would allow convenience to still be an option. I don't think we should just completely ban, any type of faster food or any type of, convenience meals that you can buy at the grocery store. But I think just having more quality ingredients and taking out the unnecessary things that don't need to be in there in the first place could kind of create a balance between both.
Okay, Katelyn, thank you very much.